Go. We ride for glory. Welcome back. Today, Warframe's Build Lab, we're doing Garuda. I had, up until this point, been doing frames in alphabetical order, provided they have been primed. And I'm now no longer doing it in that order. That order maybe didn't ever serve a purpose, but it definitely doesn't serve one now. I think that the biggest benefit is that it allows me to jump to frames that we have things to say about, which will be more important in the future if we have covered pretty much every frame and then I want to update some. Imagine a change happens in the game, or there's a I don't know, new game mode, or, and this is purely hypothetical, but just imagining that there's some kind of new gameplay loop, not even really a game mode, where, and again, this is purely hypothetical, but like something crazy, like you get random warframes and weapons, and you wanted to talk, you just kind of change what you were saying about some weirdness with that. I know it seems kind of abstract, like you might think it's kind of pulling something out of my hat, but it could happen. It really could happen, and do a streamer near you. And in those situations, I would want to prioritize the frames that I have the most to say about. There will be maybe some frames, none of which are coming to my head right now, that I just don't think there's like that much of any real value to cover, or I haven't, I don't know. Anyway, the point is, we're not doing them in any particular order. As usual, you can use the timestamps or chapters or whatever to move around to parts of the video that you prefer if you want to do that. Might be a touch more housekeeping at the beginning of this one than normal, but that's pretty much all from me. So yeah, we'll tell people we're here, welcome some people in, move on to the abilities. I'm also going to try to keep the more housekeeping. I'm going to try to keep the format of the show a little bit simpler and a little bit different. I'm going to try not to make there be so many sections, and to make the things that are in a section like be in that section. And the second half of the stream of these, we're going to allow to open up a little bit. Or I'm not going to insist on it being only builds for 2 hours. I think often that just that doesn't happen. If it absolutely is happening, fine, cool. But I think a lot of the time, really the majority of the time, it will not. Anyway, Garuda, Asymptomatic, welcome back. What's going on? Densoro, welcome back. And Darius, welcome back. How you both doing? What's up? Yeah, we're doing Garuda. We're doing Garuda actually because I was spurred on by one of you, by Pixel Piranha. You're really excited about this thing where you can use Garuda's fourth ability to propel yourself into the air and just sort of die, kill everything in sight with forced viral, I think, using Nourish. So I think the idea is that this is going to give the Seeking Talons viral, which is super strong. Like, that's really good. All damage the target takes inflicts slash, and the target also has like a meaningful amount of viral. That's nice. Very cool. So yeah, I was excited by that, and I think that's the best reason to do these. Is that some rhyme or reason is fine, but the biggest reason should be that I want to do them, like that I'm excited to do them. And we just hadn't really been doing that, so that's what we're gonna do. What the heck? Why were we doing that? I should be doing them because I want to do that frame. Of course, it's just obvious when you put it like that. Another new thing you'll be noticing I don't have much to say about is the lighting. I've never been happy with the lighting here. Part of the reason is that it significantly changes depending on the time of year, and also depending on whether it's cloudy out. The conditions in this room are not very stable in a lot of ways, just like my life overall, actually. And so it has been a little frustrating, but I'm going to go for more light. I think this looks significantly better Like, I look more like the lit key figure of the frame. It's balanced. You know, there's shadows, but not, you know, multi-directional, good multi-directional lighting. It should be pretty balanced. It doesn't look like my face is totally shadowed, but you can see the definition of my face. I look like this in person. It's not like my face is washed out and I look like a vampire more than I actually do look like a vampire in real life. So yeah, it's good. I don't really have anything else to say. If you think it isn't good, tell me, but I also won't change anything. But still tell me, just so I can sort of stew in the contempt you have for my lighting. I'm just kidding. Of course, I'm never gonna stop tweaking it. You know me well enough to know that. Is Alvarez, thank you for the Prime sub for 37 months. Welcome back. How you doing? True, Mr. Fruit, you said, oh, first, okay, first of all, what is this fashion? Can we get a breakdown? I don't know. This is some of the fashion of all time, right? It's like a you got the tank of blood, you got the blood tank, you got the kind of look the subtle kind of matte metallic is like a wine color. You got your Castlevania, that kind of feeling. Why these things, you might be asking. Um, and next question. There's not a good reason. This is, in my opinion, looking at it now, sorry, Pass Sandy, a pretty ugly armor set choice for this particular. Maybe I thought it was like like cathode. No, caliper. You know what I'm trying to say, like the tube thing. I don't know. Um, and then Garuda has this like biker jacket. Garuda Prime has this like biker jacket thing. I don't know. That's not sure I could totally tell you. Whoa, that's very different. Okay, I don't love that one. Um, yeah, she's thick. That's I do not want. Anyway, yeah. So this fashion, pretty sussy. Not great. Um, Lord Rusty, welcome back. You said, as someone who's pretty into Warframe fashion, how much do you use the things from Zeraman that let you alter the textures? Um, the yes, the whatever they're called. The things that let you change textures on. I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the name. I'm sure someone in chat will. Void shells, thank you. Um, I don't have time to use them. So I would say I have to pass that question because I it has nothing to do with my interest in them. I haven't used them at all for any frame because I haven't had time. It has zero to do with my interest in them. Shall we predict how much I'll use them in the future? Like there are some appearances where I want to add metallics where there aren't, or to balance them, and I like that you can make them eh, all the same channel. Sort of that sort of doesn't solve that problem, but sort of does. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like the idea. I'm not as much into Warframe fashion that much anymore. Not because I don't think it's cool. I still want to look good. I just don't have as much time. It is definitely one of the things to get voted off the island for me. But that's it's not necessarily because that's what I want. Um, it's more like it's because I just don't have time. Yeah. Um, but I would like to see cool things people have done with them for sure. If you have fashion you want to show me that is that, I would be down to see it. That sounds cool. Sorry, it's super hot in here, really hot. So I am making it less overbearingly hot. Told you the intro thing was going to be long today. Lord Rusty, you also asked if going forward, Duviri is going to affect these streams. Are we going to consider a Duviri loadout in a given frame's stream? Well, let's talk about that right now, actually. Yeah. So the idea is, might you make a different thing for the context of getting shown the frame at random like this when you run whatever we're going to call them, the cave game modes, paradox game modes, I don't know. Are we going to talk about how you'd mod the frame for that situation? I would say mostly no, but yes in the following situation. This is going to be in the category of things that are kind of footnotes to discussion. One of which would be maybe a frame gains an unusually large amount from the archon shard system. If you have every frame built and you maybe use them, you can't really get enough archon shards within reason unless you play for a really, really, really long time. So you would want to some extent, pick and choose where you would use archon shards. Archon shards are a huge deal for some builds because they have some desire to get to like just enough strength or something. It's usually strength. And archon shards allow you to just add a little bit regardless of what else is going on, with kind of no opportunity cost a lot of the time in practice, because you have a lot of archon shard slots and you're probably going from 0 to some archon shards. And so you it's not just with strength, that's just an example, but it can put you in a position where, yeah, like they can be a pretty important footnote, but just not much of the time. You see what I mean? There might be some frame builds where you would say archon shards are a huge deal, but most of the time they're obviously good, but it doesn't like really make a huge difference. They're obviously always good. Same thing with things like, I don't know, I guess heavy weapons. Very few heavy weapons are probably going to have any specific synergy with a frame, things like that. So it's the same thing, where you might make a build for a frame that you just notice would be pretty bad in the context of playing the Duviri paradox. You might make a build for a frame that just like blatantly has no ability to control space, or requires like a lot of setup, or really, really requires a companion or something. I'm obviously spitballing a little bit. I just don't think I just don't think that besides that, it's not, I don't think it's a huge deal besides that. And even then, you could argue that it's just not hard enough. I've been doing this Steel Path Duviri paradox experience, or whatever we're going to call it, a few times solo, and I think that this is it can be an unhelpful thing to say, but I would agree with the idea that it's not really hard enough to warrant like specific builds, even if there was a reward for them, which there isn't. That's my second point. Point the second, the Duviri paradox warframe bits are quite generalist warframe. They're like a defense mission, you know, an excavation mission. If you have a random crowd control ability on your frame, you're good. And like 80% of all builds will have a random crowd control ability. So I just don't think there's any, you literally wouldn't even want anything that you won't have, I think, a lot of the time. The frame either has a really good like area defense build, in which case that's a big enough part of Warframe that I built it. So for example, let's look at this set. Nova. Nova is pretty good at like defense and excavation missions, and so I have a build for her for that. Therefore, when I see her in this context, I could just pick that build. I think Neja is pretty solid for those game modes. Therefore, I can easily select a loadout that's good for them. Wukong, I guess, might be a little on the fence for some people, but I've always really liked Celestial Stomp, the augment for Wukong's first ability that basically lets you hold the ability to make your copy do Rhino Stomp. This is an excellent crowd control ability. This is sufficient. So if Wukong showed up and I wanted that, I could just pick this loadout. you can see where this is going. Gauss, you know, Hildren maybe you would consider not quite as much. You could kind of go into her fourth ability, but there might be a build. I guess we have to think of an example build, but something like that. There could be a build though where you like spit in the face of being good in defense or whatever missions in the name of making the build good at some other type of mission. And in theory, that could be on a frame who doesn't really have any other build that you'd normally find useful that is good at defending things. And in such a situation, I would go out of my way to make a build that was good at defensive things. Therefore, if they show up in this context, I can just pick that build, which I wouldn't otherwise have made. But my point is that most builds already have this, and in many cases, if there was a build that is good at like defense or whatever, I would just have that build already, and therefore I could just select it already. But there may theoretically be exceptions. I just like, it's hard enough to think of one that it makes me feel like we probably don't need to worry about it too much. There just isn't anything to build for specifically that isn't already something you would build for in Warframe. Mr. Fruit, you said I was roasting that Garuda fashion, but oh, that Neja, they're gorgeous. I'm glad you like it, or are you roasting this one too? Big fan of this one, yes. Haven't played my Neja in a while. Maybe we should do Neja soon. It's been a long time. Yeah, it's a cool looking skin, and I added that other helmet. Y'all know I really like to mix the helmets and the skins. Okay, anyway, so that's what I have to say about that. I think that's enough of an answer, I hope. But that's just what I think about it right now. And they'll probably change stuff about the Duviri experience, or whatever we're calling this whole situation. But I doubt that will change that answer. Thank you. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Let's actually talk about Garuda. And do a timestamp. Timestamp. Cool. Welcome back, everyone. Yeah. And just a very quick side note that people said, you know, if you do this circuit, you might want things that are good at really high steel path levels, but really you're just going to die after, you know, two cycles of 4. So you just do a cycle of 4 and then leave. You might not want to do that, but I'm perfectly fine with it. There's not much of a punishment for doing it that way. So Garuda abilities. Let's make sure we have a clean loadout, because oh boy, are we going to put some Helminth abilities on today. This is probably not a frame that I will mention building for the Duviri Paradox stuff specifically, because it's not difficult to make this frame have a build that is a very good fit for those modes, and also like lots of the rest of Warframe. That is not particularly challenging on this frame. So yeah. Ability overview time. Passive. You get a damage increase when you kill things, and she has a default melee weapon if you don't have a melee weapon equipped in the melee weapons slot. The talons are fine. Not going to get into that too much, I don't think. Might just be a preference of some people's to use them because they look cool, though. Like that, I can imagine someone bringing that up, but I don't think I have anything to say about it, unless anyone else does. Yeah, it's free damage. Very few Warframe passives are just free damage. That's good. Not really anything else to say, though, in my opinion. Dread Mirror. You leap pretty far and slash the enemy, and then you get a shield. This is kind of like Volt's electric shield. It is a screen in front of you that blocks incoming projectiles, and it moves with your view. So if you aim in a direction, if you look in a direction, it moves with you. If you were to like fall and stagger, you could still move it around because you're looking around, if I recall anyway. It doesn't have to be on the front of your Warframe is the point, if I remember correctly. That's nice. So you can block bullets with it, you can move it around. Right, it's locked to your Warframe, but with your view. And then you can charge up this blood orb that you collect to do big damage in an area. This is a pretty loaded ability with a lot of effects. It also has this effect where if you directly target an enemy with very low health, you execute them. They instantly die if they're below a certain health threshold. The below a certain health threshold thing, I don't think is that good, because Warframe is not a game that heavily values killing one enemy super a lot. And the only times it does value that, you can't use this ability on those enemies. Bosses. The Blood Orb AoE thing, on the other hand, especially because you can guarantee that it will trigger Slash, I've had pretty good experiences with. Frontal Bullet Shield, fine. Yeah, it's alright. It does a lot of things. We'll talk about augments in this section too, and this is an interesting one that kind of has a playstyle associated with it. Blood Altar. Also, you leap at enemies from a long range, but this time you turn them into a bubbler that delivers you delicious Poland spring water, not sponsored, to your belly. It's just mysteriously red water, and it heals your health bar. Yeah, mostly this one is nice because Garuda has a third ability that turns your health into energy. So having an ability that gives you just like constant like health is, yeah, that's nice. You can get the health other ways, but as I always like to mention about healing that isn't from your operator, this allows you to multitask. You do not need to stop what else you are doing. And I think it's particularly important for bloodletting, where you probably don't want to sit around in your operator doing nothing, healing up your Warframe, and then in your Warframe doing bloodletting several times, and then back to operator to heal up your Warframe. And what you did there is you gained energy. That seems a tad slow. Probably better if you don't need to do all that back and forth. You could just hit this, you've got some healing going on, you're good to go. Yeah, pretty excellent ability. Bloodletting, don't have too much else to say about Blood Altar, but pretty powerful way to get energy. There's a lot of ways to get energy in Warframe, but you don't need those because you have this. And all of them, there's an opportunity cost, so you can use something else. Yeah, I think this is good, simple, cool, pretty good ability. Makes her an interesting Helminth ability platform because you have this ability to get tons of energy. Seeking Talons debuffs enemies in an area in your view thing, and they take a slash status effect for any source of damage they get dealt. Combo potential ensues. Augments quickly, and then we'll get into the significant combo potential. I hope I have all the augments. Let me know if I don't. Dread Ward. This is the first ability Dread Mirror augment. It says become unkillable for 8 seconds when Dread Mirror kills a target by ripping its life force. This means like when you execute the enemy, you target an enemy specifically, they're below a certain amount of health, you execute them. This makes you unkillable for 8 seconds. I believe a moddable duration. Let's check. Yeah. So this is interesting. I said that this one kind of leads to its whole own playstyle. What I meant by that is that, if you use this and you have survivability mods, they feel a little silly in that they do nothing unless you like don't keep it up. So I'd kind of rather build duration. But then you just have to keep doing this. You might really like that. If you don't, it doesn't feel particularly necessary here because Garuda has pretty good base armor and a healing ability. And also this ability will just kill everything anyway, but we'll get to that later. So I think this is a great like playstyle option, but is it actually good in terms of opportunity cost? In my opinion, not really. It's just not really necessary. The all you're getting is that you don't die, which is just the weird thing about Warframe is how like not valuable that is sometimes. That just doesn't do anything a lot of the time. But yeah, it can be a cool way to stay alive. Like, that's not bad. Bloodforge, simple and dirty. When you use bloodletting, you reload your weapon. Very good. Get a weapon with long reload. Use Bloodforge instead of hitting the reload button. Profit with big damage. Very nice. Love this augment. Great augment. Doesn't really require any synergizing at all, I think. You can just multitask with this, and even if the weapon's reload wasn't long, you just don't have to do bloodletting and a reload separately. But obviously, you can push the limit by doing this with a weapon that has a long reload. In particular, just as a very simple example, there are some weapons that have fairly obvious synergy with Garuda that have very long reloads. The Sobek is a simple example that I will briefly discuss with you. I think I have reload speed on this because I'm bad at examples. Why is the reload like weirdly kind of okay? Primary merciless. 2.7-second reload, but acid shells though. Enemies explode on death, dealing 450 plus 45% of the enemy's max health in a 15-meter radius. This damage is radial, meaning that it decreases as you get further out, but it still means that if you kill an enemy and a nearby enemy has been hit with Seeking Talons and is, has the same or less health than that enemy is dead because they take damage that turns into a slash status effect. The source amount of damage is that enemy's health. Therefore, mathematically, they are dead. So if you can get one enemy killed with this, and it's one of the heavier enemies in the group, they're all dead. It doesn't really matter what they are or what's going on with them. The Sobek, not particularly known for doing tons of damage in and of itself, yeah, it's easy to fix that when you have a Warframe that has a completely free damage buff and can very quickly reload the weapon and, and makes all of the weapon's attacks inflict slash status effects. It's not particularly difficult to get a kill with the Sobek when you have these abilities. So that's just one example, but Bloodforge, in context, I think this is extremely strong. This combined with Garuda's other traits means that you can make enemies die with essentially anything that does any meaningful amount of damage, even if it has atrocious substats. Doesn't have like meaningful status or crit. If as long as it's not literally hitting for no damage and you have mods on it, it's going to kill enemies, and you'll be able to use it pretty easily. Zalvaris, you said Bloodforge fixes ribbons that have negative reload, so with no other reload mods, your reload takes 10 plus seconds. Sure, right. For this can also be that kind of troubleshooting thing where you want to synergize with something that it's just a perfectly good thing and it just happens to have a long reload. It isn't necessarily good or bad with Garuda. Garuda just is the mechanic for the job. Sure, absolutely. Good stuff. Pistol Whip, you said, does it count as a reload for the relatively new primary plated round, which gives a damage bonus for each round loaded? No, I don't think so. I believe that when this says reload, it just means in the colloquial sense, like the ammo is put back in the magazine. The weapon can now be fired using space gunpowder, but you didn't actually reload it. Like in game terms, the word reloaded is misused here, I guess you could say. I don't think the game doesn't flag it as the weapon having been reloaded, I don't believe. I think that this means that there are some interesting interactions with weapons that you want to avoid reloading. I don't know if this is true, but it'd be easy to test, so we'll leave the Soma on. This is what came to mind. The idea is this would reset on reloading, but if the ammo just gets put in the weapon, then maybe that would work. The bullets go back in the gun without being reloaded, which is what reloading means, but it doesn't count as reloading. It specifically does not work with Soma. Well, that's just inconsistent and persnickety. But anyway, that's the Zalvaris. You may or may not be right. We'll leave it at that for now. I believe you. That's probably true. I'm just saying, I'm either way. That's the example I can think of. The Soma mod is maybe just picky. Thank you for bringing up the example though. Pistol, that was a good question. Zalveris, that's a good counterpoint. The Soma mod is a bit picky. I don't remember it with Bloodforge, but I tried to do something else to bypass that mod, and it didn't work. Anyway, you're likely correct. Blending Talons. Seeking Talons can be tapped to do an AoE around Garuda. Normally, you have a big reticle in front of you, and it hits enemies that you're looking at, whereas this lets you do it as just a normal AoE. The range is affected by range mods. And Garuda's Talons, the melee weapon, gain combo count chance when hitting enemies with bleed. So that part isn't really a Seeking Talons effect exactly. Quality of life, but I like quality of life. I like this. It lets you, it makes it very cozy if you plan to combine this ability with other area of effect abilities that are a normal AoE. For example, we can go, if that is all the augments, we can go right to the build section. And I'll show you a straightforward, maybe a little boring thing that I've been using for a while. This is a combo with Blending Talons, Seeking Talons, and Breach Surge. Seeking Talons causes enemies to turn damage they take into slash status effects, so they take damage over time. Breach Surge makes damage enemies take turn into a little spark that fires at a nearby enemy. So enemies affected by both effects, provided they are in the presence of other enemies, will kill each other with a not infinite but very large damage loop. All you have to do is hit both abilities and enemies in the radius, which is pleasingly similar but not the same. 17 meters with my current modest range. And then this one is bigger. It's 34 meters. But enemies in the radius, and you could get significantly more range than this, will just die. I find Blending Talons very cozy for that use of the ability, but we're going to talk about another way you can use the ability where I don't think it really matters that much. I think it's worth noting that on paper, this doesn't really do anything, but I do still kind of like it. And I think you will find that if you have this, it doesn't really matter what the other mods on your Garuda are. So that's a thought. I would put Cunning Drift here if I had the space. Arcane Tempo is here for the Sobek. I really do think the Sobek is like the little engine that could sometimes. That the help is appreciated. Also a big fan of the of weapons that kind of guarantee hits on enemies with Garuda, since as long as they have incoming damage, they're going to die. So that's why I have the secondary Vermisplicer gun. This just fires homing tentacles that latch onto 3, 5, whatever enemies, and do pretty modest damage, body shots, because it kind of has an aimbot, like it aims for you. But I think it's a good fit here. Why do I have this Za? For Exodia Contagion, and then you do Seeking Talons, and this will do slash, because the base damage on this effect is good, but it doesn't do any status or anything usually. And so, I mean, you could do gas. In fact, I think I have done gas here. But often the damage in practice is just a little inadequate. And so if you have, force slash or whatever, this can go a lot further. Sure, cool, neat. However, what we're actually going to do, though, is what Pixel Piranha suggested, which is to put Nourish on it. I haven't done this, so I don't know if I'm understanding correctly, but I think this ability is doing something weird, and it affects Warframe abilities intentionally, I believe. But that's quite unique. Most elemental buffing abilities don't do that. A recent Grendel rework made this viral. They've specifically curated it here. It's probably meant to work with Warframe powers. That just seems quite strong. As with a lot of things in Warframe, it's pretty difficult for something to be overpowered in Warframe, as per se. But that seems really powerful, so let's try that. because that means that you could just cast Seeking Talons and you would get viral with your slash automatically. That seems very, very good. I will reiterate that I'm only replacing Dreadmere because I personally prefer not to use it, not because I think it's like bad or anything. I just think that it's kind of unnecessary, or you could say it's unnecessary to survive without it. It's kind of just a playstyle choice. It's a way you can keep Garuda alive. That's how I think of it. But I just don't like to. I don't think it's necessary. Nom, my child, so beautiful to behold. Take my resources. Synthron, welcome back. I recently tried Garuda and Revenant in Duviri and was pleasantly surprised. What do you mean by that? Like you expected them to be bad there, or you hadn't played them before? Tell me more. Anything in particular you enjoyed? Okay, that doesn't do anything when it's a shared ability. I'm still using Bloodforge. Rip this augment slot. And let's put on some mods. Growing Power. Basically range and the Umbral set. Okay, yeah, is what I probably still want. We're going to talk a little bit about strength in a sec. Anyway. Range. Pow. No, my augment slot. What's, oh, it hurts. No. And what about the 2Ds? Why? What is this modding configuration? What are you doing to me? I guess. Adaptation, I guess. Meh. Yeah. This is why you should drop the Umbrals. But I do think they're really good, Pistol. Garuda has great base armor. Base health is normal, but I think you'll use the strength. The bleed chance on Seeking Talons is affected by strength, so it doesn't start at 100%. You don't need very much strength to get it to 100%, but you may want to offset overextended. I think range, like large range, is quite noticeable with this strategy. So I want high range. So I do think these are a very good fit, but of course you can do without them if you want. As always. What else? Prime continuity, I guess. Yeah. For the duration on the bleed? It's already 10 seconds. Blood Altar has a 20-second duration by default. I feel like I don't need this. It might just be comfortable. What about Nourish? 25-second duration. Yeah, it might just be comfortable, I guess. I don't know if you need this that bad. If you're not going to commit to Umbral Forma, triple Umbra is too much of an opportunity cost, in your opinion. It's true, on a lot of builds, you can't fit... mathematically, you cannot fit, every mod slot. But a lot of the time, you only give up the Exile slot, excuse me. And I actually am totally willing to commit the Umbral Forma in this case. I just want to make sure it's a frame where I think it's hard to conceive that I wouldn't want at least one of them. And on Garuda, I think because of this aspect of Seeking Talons, it's very difficult to imagine that I wouldn't want Umbral Intensify. So I will totally put it on. But I still... anyway. It's fine. Pow. Pistol, you said, incidentally, this is Umbral Forma week from Teshin's Steel Offerings if you didn't buy that / have spare essence. That slaps. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for telling us that. I'm going to go buy that right now. Or find out that I don't have enough, but buy it in a few days. We will talk a little bit about Blind Rage, though, as Pistol Whip mentions, because I think that is a good option as well. So we'll get to that. And I see mail as well. Let me just go... Oh, you can teleport to Teshin. Classic. What do you got? Did I just spend it all on Weapon adapters? You bet I did. Oh, I did. Beautiful. You love to see it. I bought like 15 or whatever primary weapon adapters and spent all my steel essence. I would have been able to buy it right then, but I just spent like 150 steel essence. Like more than that. Like 200 plus steel essence. I could easily have bought what I wanted and I'm actually going to use right now and still had enough. New month, new boosters. Yachigami, that's awfully generous of you. Thank you. I still have some of the ones from the previous time, which are from you, if I recall. Yep. Thank you. Also, one can teleport to Teshin from the faction console under Conclave. Oh, you can, can't you? Oh, yeah, under miscellaneous Conclave, right. Nice. Okay, so the Umbral Forma thing is painful, but in any case, I actually don't think I said it's got to be a frame where I feel like you can feel confident that you're going to use one of the Umbral mods pretty much every time. I think there's not that many frames that I feel confident about that with. So I'm fairly comfortable committing one or two here and there. Yeah. By the way, something I do think is useful since we have the cave situation, uh, paradox, whatever you want to call it, is cleaning up loadouts a little bit. So if I decide I like this better, I will probably remove this one or just move it to like B or something. Having the one that I think would be the most generalist be configuration A, I think has become pretty meaningful. That's nice. That's just nice quality of life. I have not used any of my 11 Umbral Forma due to decision paralysis. Absolutely, that's pretty much why I seemingly recklessly put one on here. I know I'm not gonna use them ever if I don't do it like that. So yeah, I'm pretty confident I'll do it like this. Now let's talk about Blind Rage though. Pistol Whip, you said instead of propping up the Umbral set, and I don't think it's propping up the Umbral set. I think they're all really good, and I really want all of these effects. But you could also uh, consider using Blind Rage. Pistol Whip, you said, for a compact strength solution, since Bloodletting lets her bypass low efficiency to some extent. Indeed, you can absolutely just get a ton of strength through this instead. One of the reasons uh, I don't care about that as much is that I don't think there's that much else to run. If you have this combination of effects, any enemy I look at dies. So, and my heal is good to go. You know, I've got long range. Like, I almost feel like further mod slots would not benefit me. You could do, absolutely, you could do Blind Rage instead of, but kind of instead of Rumble Intensify and the other Strength, and you'd have a lot of space freed up, but here I just feel like the opportunity cost is a little low as well. But indeed, Archon Shards could have propped up the armor. There's actually even more ways to do the armor thing now. We recently got Reaper, Arcane Reaper, which seems perfectly sensible here, sure. At max rank, this is a pretty substantial armor gain. And I like this a lot more than stuff like Arcane Guardian in some cases, because this one you can control. You can make sure you have the initial damage reduction. And then if you run something like Adaptation, you're not going from literally 0 damage reduction or like, you know, the 20% from the frame's default armor or whatever to trying to survive Steel Path enemy damage. You can start out with like 80% of the damage being reduced, something like that. There are lots of ways to get health and armor that are not mods. That's absolutely true. I just consider this to be a place where the opportunity cost of them being mods is unusually low. There just isn't very much. I don't really want anything else in these mod slots. Since I feel that way, but some people probably don't, probably Pistol Whip, you don't agree, let's talk about what you could run instead. Equilibrium, I guess, would be fine, but I'm really interested in flow, maybe. If you, especially with Blind Rage, this seems like it has synergy in that situation. If you have more expensive abilities, therefore, it's almost your entire energy bar to use Seeking Talons, but you can use Bloodletting to get a ton of energy. Having more of a larger wallet to store that energy in feels like it's actually meaningful. Whereas on my build's case here, this wouldn't really do anything a lot of the time. I can at will get the energy I need, and I don't even need a particularly full wallet to, do the thing. But in Pistol Whip's suggestion, I feel like the value of flow would go up a lot. Another option that came to mind was there are very few, but a few kind of generic value mods available. The big one that comes to mind, I can't remember the name of. It's when you swap. Vigorous Swap. It's when you swap. Vigorous Swap. Classic. Yes. This just gives you damage on all your weapons if you have swapped to them in the past 3 seconds. You know if you're the kind of player who does that, and if you do, then this is more or less a free serration on all of your weapons for a Warframe mod slot, which is sometimes a good trade. And I think in this case it would be a good trade. But I want to talk about Nourish a little bit too, because one of the other things that is sick about Nourish here, which feels relevant to this discussion, is that according to those of you who brought this up, Nourish's energy modifier, where you get more incoming energy, affects Bloodletting. So instead of getting 40%, energy, you get 80% energy, apparently, or like even more with strength, because that's affected by strength, I believe. Looks like strength. Ooh, like that. Ooh, uh-oh. Hold me back. That's pretty scary. So yeah, that's something to consider as well. The Nourish itself will give you very substantial energy. I guess that's probably, in some ways, another reason to use Prime Flow if you just want to store up a lot of energy. Very good stuff. Yeah, so let's try that. Let's use it. Again, I'd probably put Cunning Drift here. In a perfect world, I want all strength. I mean range. Let's see what the range is. We gotta see what the range is. I don't know if I want this. I guess I understand why I have this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's just hurt some people and see what happens. And you know what we'll do while hurting some people to see what happens is we'll do a mission to get Steel Essence because I spent it all. Nah, it's not that urgent. Not that urgent. I don't need them that urgently, but it's not bad to stockpile them if I'm gonna spend them like I just did. Yes, a pistol whip. I have a delicious flask of that's Kool-Aid in there actually. That I carry around. I have that so I don't get dehydrated while murdering people for a living. That's what I do. Oh god. I was selling it so good. I don't have enough energy. Whoa, baby, that's some energy. Yep, it does work. That works. Oh boy. That's the Kool-Aid, folks. Whew, okay, so yeah, it does give everyone viral. That's really scary. That's pretty nasty. It being an AoE sounds kind of nice. Maybe we want Blending Talons back. It goes through walls. Seeking Talons goes through walls. Yeah, the instant viral and bleed through walls is just a whole mood. Like that is a new level. So I definitely understand the appeal. Like that's messed up. The range is pretty good too. Even without, you know, we can gain a modest increase in range still. That's pretty sweet. You can kind of fly as well, which lets you stay alive while enemies die, although it probably won't take that long. These are Steel Path level enemies, and it's not exactly taking an eternity to kill them, so... Densora, you said, plus weapon damage multipliers like Nourish multiply with your kill streak passive. That's a little confusing. You're trying to say that the Nourish damage bonus, I would imagine, is elemental damage. It works like an elemental mod. And Garuda's passive is, I would guess, a base damage mod, which means they have a multiplicative damage bonus. So we're doing maybe not intuitively way more damage than just having two whatever damage buffs. They're both separate damage increases, and both have a pretty big magnitude too. The weapon already has, the weapons already have those damage increases, but it's a big deal for a Seeking Talons because it doesn't. It doesn't have any damage increases. So it goes from having none to getting 100% more, and then multiplying all of that by about 100% from the viral damage. So you're probably doing four times the normal damage, which is allowing the base damage of Seeking Talons, which I hadn't really thought. I thought that was going to be the problem, that's just kind of bad. But look how high the base damage of the hit is. That's nuts. And then strength itself makes it higher. You could just build more strength and it would give you more viral damage, and it would also give you better Seeking Talons base damage. That's nuts. That is so much more damage. Wow. Yeah, that was the main thing I was worried about. That's why I wanted to test this, actually, is because I thought there was going to be a gotcha moment here where, yeah, like viral and slash together sounds good, but the base damage of Seeking Talons is just kind of, it's only okay. But in fact, no, you have pretty ample damage boosts. And this is with quite low strength. This is not with very high strength. Well, I don't need my companion to be doing viral anymore because we have that sorted out now. I had brought a Panzervopelphyla to apply viral for my Breach Surge and Seeking Your Blending Talons combo. But yeah, you don't need that now. We got that part. Death Cube time? I don't know. You don't really need energy either because you can hit your third ability and instantly restore 80% of your energy bar. So I don't know about I'm not really that excited about that either. No. There's a gotcha in this case. It's probably the ancient healers protecting nearby enemies from the status effects. To some extent, it's still working pretty well, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's not absolutely perfect. Look at how much loot is in these other rooms. That's spicy. Yeah, that Acolyte is screwed. It's like you came into the wrong lobby. Chili, you said, did they change Garuda's fourth ability? Never knew it shot out knives. That might be a visual effect from the Prime version of the frame. They didn't change the ability. Although you may also have been seeing the augmented version, which is, it can be an AoE around you instead of being a reticle like this. That might make it harder or easier to see the knives. I don't know. I'll show you what that looks like because I think I'm going to put it on this build. But no, to my knowledge, they didn't change the effect. It just might not have been as easy to see the knives. Maybe it's my fashion, maybe it's the Prime. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just getting to focus on it a little more because that's all we have to do and everything nearby dies. Welcome aboard, Chili. How you doing? We were just playing around with Nourish with Seeking Talons. Nourish gives viral damage uniquely to abilities. There's a lot of elemental buffing abilities that give your Warframe's weapons a damage increase that's an elemental damage bonus, but they don't affect Warframe powers. Grendel's Nourish, that, gives you viral damage that is on your frame's abilities, which and you do status effects with it too. So Seeking Talons ends up doing a viral status effect and also a bunch of slash to enemies, which makes it turns out pretty easy to kill pretty much anything when you have all those damage boosts. You get a big damage increase, you get the viral damage increase, strength increases the base damage of Seeking Talons, of course, and then Garuda's passive increases the damage of Seeking Talons, and you end up having really good damage. I have almost no, like, just neutral strength. I haven't really built strength. These are Steel Path infested, but it'll go through armor, so it should kill Grenier just fine. And they're very dead. Real dead. Pretty good. Pretty impressed, yeah. Just a matter of, like, fiddling around with quality of life for me, I think. Densor, excuse me, Lord Rusty, you said, I don't understand why you'd want Vigorous Swap on Garuda. You already have so much extra base damage from the passive. I wasn't really suggesting that you put Vigorous Swap on. I was just trying to give an example of a mod that can give you value on your loadout if you have a free mod slot on your Warframe. But in this case, I was saying I think the opportunity cost is quite low. That example was meant to illustrate that it's not very good what you gain by saving the mod slots. Indeed, I agree with you. I don't think you really gain that much, but this can be okay sometimes. Again, I just think the problem is that usually Warframe mod slots are really restricted, and then in this case, maybe they're not, but I already have a lot of damage, which is really the only meager thing I would have gained. So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it really gains you much, but I wasn't really recommending it. I always end up in this situation. I've got a rank 4 Cunning Drift just for the occasion. I want to fit stretch. I want to fit more range. That makes it tempting to remove the Umbral mods that I just put on. You done good, kid, and that's the end of the show. That's right. We're just gonna stop it right here. We will probably take a break here. I think the only thing I don't like about this is that it's such a good idea that I just don't think there's that much to say. There's just not much else to say. We're not going to end the stream. We're still going to stream for an hour. But yeah, it's real good. That's good. I think it'll feel a lot more comfortable with blending talents. But yeah, I have a worse idea. I'm sure you do. I have... Indeed. Almost no matter what idea you have, it's a worse idea. Densor, in all seriousness, of course, I absolutely do want to hear it. But yeah, that's a whole mood. I don't have a better idea, but I do have an idea, and you know what that means. Yesterday night, I went out to dinner, and I had some delicious fatty tuna on crispy kind of blowtorched rice, and a gigantic piece of fried chicken as part of a spicy chicken sandwich with cheese and this really nice shredded lettuce, and it was really good. And then I had an espresso martini, and it was a very, very, very boozy espresso martini, like not that well balanced. The coffee flavor was good. The booze flavor was good. I have a very high tolerance to the taste of alcohol, and it didn't taste bad, but it wasn't a very like balanced drink, I guess chemically. All the things in it tasted good, and I would have enjoyed all the things in it alone. So I didn't dislike the taste, but it didn't really do anything, you know what I mean? It was like if you just spilled vodka, but I think rum, they were using a white rum into my espresso and coffee liquor, which, like, if you did that, I would be like, hey, why'd you do that? And then I would drink it. So it was good, but not great. And then I had a Mai Tai, and that was pretty good. And then I had a slice of cheesecake. And then I went to bed. So if you've been keeping score, That's you know, the crispy tuna on rice, carry the one, Mai Tai, an espresso martini with a lot of booze in it. Move this over here, divided by two, square root of, I had a giant piece of fried chicken and a piece of cheesecake. I got ridiculously bad acid reflux. Uh, that's literally every single piece of food that gives you bad acid reflux. I'm so stupid. It was so good. It was all really good. The cheesecake was particularly good. I'm such an idiot. Like, so that's like one of the stupidest things I've done in a long time. For real, if you've been following the food and drink Zandy sub theme, I'm like the person who tells you not to do that, and I did that. So I'm not sure if that just tells you the food was really good, which it was, but stacking multipliers for the acid reflux debuff expertly. Oh, I brewed myself a delicious cup of filter coffee right before leaving because I'm an idiot man. Um, I, I'm, I am leaving. Talk to you in a sec. Hello, and welcome back to my Twitch archive parlay, the part of the show where I keep you entertained while hitting the restroom by recording a little Q&A right before the stream. Hello, Past Zandy here. You're with me for a few minutes. Stretch your legs, get a drink, grab a snack, and let's listen to this question from Grimori. Grimori asks, why do you still do build videos? I've been caught. Warframe is Paradox now. Oh, with the dash S. This is meant to be sarcastic. Why do you still do build lab videos? Warframe is just the Paradox modes now, and it's meant to be sarcastic. Okay. Is Paradox buildy? How about that? I've been referring to just like Paradox, that thing. I know what you mean. I've been referring to that as starting in the cave, or I guess decrees are kind of a separate thing, but they're not separate. There is kind of a game loop that you could call Paradox, sure. So for this parlay, we'll say that thing that's called Paradox for now anyway. I mean, I think it's called a roguelike, but but I am frustrated by that term because I think people often don't know what people actually mean when they say that, and so I'm okay with that term provided that there's an explanation along with it, and there is. So, yeah, no, I here the thing, Grimory. I'm gonna pretend this is a serious comment. Warframe is just generalist. For better or worse, it's just the land of generalists, and the Duviri paradox is exactly that. Like, for better or worse, it's the land of generalism. In fact, I think that a lot of the negative things about the Duviri paradox that are not just people feeling like it's weird and different and not what they want. That's perfectly valid, by the way. I'm just saying that's not really a critique of the design idea of putting it in Warframe. That just means, understandably, not everybody wants that. Like, that's okay. That's fine. But it's also like literally a bad idea for a few reasons at least, and a good idea for some reasons. But one of the bad reasons is that it does kind of shave off some of the good things that Warframe was doing that were not generalist build stuff. Lightning quick. Is generalism bad? That's what it sounds like you're saying. No, I think the problem with a general option being good is that it implies that the specific options aren't stronger or relevant enough that it feels worth not being generalist, because lots of players like building specific things. Some people like generalist things too. But generalism, making one build and then it's just kind of good for everything, in a way, that approaches not making a build, if you think about it. It's sort of like you want one thing that just works everywhere, because why? Like, so that you don't have to make other things, which, again, that's perfectly fine, but it just kind of sounds like that person doesn't want to make builds. Do you see what I mean? That's okay. But if the goal of the system is for there to be choices, and the kind of ground state of the system or the meta of the system is to kind of make the least choices, that seems it seems like you failed. The game seems like it failed, don't you think? Um, that that's it. End aside about generalism. Is does Paradox have any of that? Well, I mean, there's like some big bongo decrees. There's the one where your status effects spread, but and that's really good. I think it's noticeably more powerful than a lot of the other ones, but it's kind of good with everything that is good in Warframe. I guess that's the problem. There really aren't there really aren't niches. I guess it would have to be something like what would they even be in Warframe? That's weird. I don't know. And the thing is that adding options that you get randomly really encourages you to make a game where anything goes, doesn't it? So yeah, no, I don't think it is. But that's not necessarily bad. I just feel like the parts of Warframe that you might like that are good at making interesting build decisions, Paradox doesn't really feature those things, and it's a little difficult for me to imagine how it would. So let's stop there. We've done very well. I hope you'll agree. If you want to submit a question to these types of segments, you can do so using a link I'm posting in chat. Just click that form and you can submit a thing that I'll answer the next time we stream, this time on a Thursday. Talk to you then. For now, we got half the show left. On with the show. Whoosh. Welcome back, XPG. What's up? We are partway into today's Build Lab stream for Garuda. Asymptomatic, thank you for gifting a tier 2 sub to Pistol Whip. That is your 123rd gift sub. That's a whole mood. Thank you very much for the tier 2 sub. I appreciate the support. That gives you Parley, which is the long form version of ARRchive Parley that we just did. Looking forward to what Pistol Whip decides to ask. Someone stop this dastardly fiend who's gifting me too many subs. Before the break, we talked about this, like, yeah, it's real good. You can just hit a button and, oh, we'll just show it. And then we can have a discussion about how to cover more stuff. Because it would be safe, unnecessarily safe, to not discuss, you know, like, for example, that Dread Mirror thing where you can execute enemies that way. We could just mock something like that up. We might not have time to play a ton of it or anything, but we can still fiddle with that. I want people to have options. I mean, we talked about options, right? You could build this build, but I think the ideal here is that if I can imagine somebody would probably want a build, we should do it, ideally. Obviously, you still gotta pick and choose to some extent, but I think that's totally possible within the scope of the time we have. So yeah, I don't know. I think we should do that, just because it seems like something somebody might want. I don't know. But I guess it's talking about all of you. So do you want that? How do you feel about that? Do you care about that? I guess it. You know, if people don't want that, then the effort is a little silly, but I guess we don't necessarily know who doesn't want that. And the people from YouTube don't get to say before this exists, I suppose, right? It's not like the end of the world if we don't cover it here. You know, we can always circle back around, but this isn't doing that much damage. It's not bad, but I have slightly less of an allergic rejection of Nourish than Gloom, but it does feel creatively sterile to me. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think one of the problems with that topic is that sometimes the whole this is a boring typical thing, like I could just turn around and say something unhelpful like I've actually never heard anybody recommend putting Nourish on a build before, but that's just because I live under a rock or whatever. That it's not particularly valid of me to say that. Nor do I think it's a good dismissal of this use case, which has, like, particular synergy. This is significantly more than just, you know, Nourish, go burr. It's a good ability. But this is like we're making a pretty unique use of the fact that it increases energy gain. We get to use the fact that it specifically affects Warframe powers. Like, this feels like the place to do the Nourish thing, to me anyway. So I don't know. It's a point well taken that maybe that's just not that exciting. But I don't think it's not sure I'm into the idea that it's uncreative, just because it might be considered a common option. I'm also not. I'm just not convinced that matters. But you're right. It is definitely not surprising that putting nourish on a warframe would make the warframe good. I just think how it makes this warframe good is cool. But I can pick up what you're putting down. I know Pixel was excited about the fact that you can just kind of fly by repeatedly doing, probably with casting speed. You just kind of stay up here for a bit. Just for a while. Repeatedly casting a couple of Seeking Talons and then Bloodletting. Anyway, I just feel strongly that the you know, community on the Reddit or whatever, hooking onto a thing doesn't mean we shouldn't ever bring it up. I'm personally excited when it's a thing that has an interaction specific to that situation, and I think if this does, like, that's cool. That's the time I actually want to talk about it. If people want to use it for other stuff, that's also good. There's just no use talking about it. It's just pointless. There's no need, because obviously Roar will make you do good damage. But Nourish is more than obviously good in this situation. You know what I mean? It's not just any other warframe. That's how I think of it. So I don't think that's that boring. I feel like you all, if you think it's boring, I want to interrogate the idea that that's because it's been placed all over the place, but there might be something a bit different about, or just more exciting mechanically, I guess, about this use of it. But I'm totally down if that just doesn't matter to you. But it matters to me. I will definitely consistently cover abilities in that situation. I don't think it would be that interesting to talk about Nourish for many other frames, but it's true that Nourish is in its current form just a super stacked ability. Mr. Fu, you said there's no other ability in this game that can give you way more energy, damage, and the best status effect in the game. That is a totally valid oversimplification. Indeed, this is like Warframe the ability. Get a lot more energy. Have viral happen all of the time. And what else does this do? You get more damage, yeah. The explosive armor counter thing exists, I guess. Yeah, it's real good. These buffs extend to squad mates, because, you know, just in case. Yeah. The big three things all at once. Yeah, this is very, very good. For sure. That being said, I still feel like it was worth discussing because it does have I think, a uniquely, beyond those benefits, powerful interaction here. It gives you those things, but in a way you normally wouldn't have been able to have gotten them without another ability. On a lot of frames, this is totally not worth mentioning because all you're doing is getting these benefits you could have got many other ways. You could have got viral on your abilities, or your weapons, excuse me. You could have gotten more energy, etc. Just not this efficiently. But it's just like, okay, so if that's what you want, that's fine. It would be like saying, you know, I want more damage, and get this, I'm using Roar. It's like, yes, that's what the ability does. But I thought this was an interesting use of the thing. Anyway, let's make something else. And for some people, they might prefer the Breach Surge one. You know, I don't mind this. I kind of like that the enemies are stunned during this. That's a benefit of this version. I like that they, because of Breach Surge, they're not really moving, or if they survive, they have radiation. That's cool. Anyway, but let's make something else. We can talk a little bit briefly about like peripheral stuff. Like one thing I mentioned is if you do the nourish thing, you don't really need a Panzerwolfephyla because you have the viral already. This is a good companion anyway, but you know you could use something else. Like what? Like who? Randomly pulling enemies close together seems good with the Sobek. So let's swap to that for now. The idea being that when a group of enemies gets joined together, you could just acid shells them and they'll all explode, provided you hit your Seeking Talons button. Good stuff. Seems good. There's really no other. I said let's talk about the peripheral stuff, like, and that's it. We've concluded discussing. Somebody mentioned one of the Archon shards. Do you want to briefly talk about that? We can talk about that. I forget, though. Rusty, you said if you're running Nourish, have you considered running it in Archon Nourish? What is Archon Nourish? You said, have you considered running the Archon thing instead of Umbral mods? The thing like Archon Vitality or something? Archon, what's that one Archon mod? I know what you're talking about. I think I know what you're talking about. The one with the healing, yeah. I just can't remember or something. Anyway. Let's go look at Archon Intensify. Or I can just pull it up in here. Nance. 30% ability strength. Restoring health with abilities grants 30% ability strength for 10 seconds. Couple of things. First one, as Rusty has correctly identified, the Helminth version of Nourish doesn't heal anyone. It doesn't heal you, doesn't heal your teammates. Rusty was probably thinking, it says self-heal removed, but maybe not the teammate thing. That's very unclear, but it doesn't heal anyone as far as I'm aware. Thing number two, the only benefit is that you get more strength, but then I think the Umbral effect is, you know, you might as well use the Umbral one or do the Blind Rage thing. And Densori, you said a single blue shard for HP regen makes bloodletting much comfier. Because I'm using Blood Altar to regen health, I don't know how much I would value that, but let's take a look at that. We hardly ever talk about Archon shards, so if people are using them, I say we talk about them. 5 health regen per second. Yeah, that sounds kind of nice. And the idea here is that if you have any health above your minimum, you can use bloodletting. And so if you get back little bits of health, then you can reload with bloodletting and all the other good stuff. Cool. I do briefly want to discuss the idea of using quick thinking. I don't think you should, but I did for a while, and it was all right. So let's talk about that. The idea being that you can get energy extremely effectively with this build, and this because you get about an equal amount by default of energy for health, and quick thinking makes the energy worth 240% more than health. Profit, sort of. But the problem is that this will make you get chain staggered if you take big hits of damage, and you'll die. But otherwise, it's good. But it isn't? I don't know. You'll be killed instantly if you equip this, but otherwise, it's good. Great. Anyway. Yeah, and Densor, I understand. I also subsumed over Blood Altar a lot of times. Because the Dread Mirror, excuse me, is an ability I think is kind of fun. Yeah, quick thinking, you could add Prime Sure-Footed to negate that, right? Can I throw voracious metastasis into the ring as a way to really pump energy to all? I think it'd probably put Eevee Trinity to shame. I don't remember this. Consume energy to heal yourself and grant matching energy to each ally. Ooh, that's neat. That's cute. Ooh. Oh, Rusty, ooh. That's very cute. Yeah, it sure is team support. Now this is pod racing. You the the value proposition on is supporting your teammates isn't that good, I don't think, in Warframe. Like, it's not literally actually beneficial that often to do things that are teamwork in Warframe. That's sort of sad to say it that way, but I think that's true. That being said, this seems like a pretty good use case for this. Yeah. You heal back the energy, you heal back more than enough health to get the energy that you lost, and then you give back the whole you give the whole squad a ton of energy. I think in modern Warframe this isn't it. There was a time when this would have been gangbusters. That's true, I think. I think you're right. Like the era of stacking and then you repeatedly nuke the entire map to get a lot of like experience or something. This would have been extremely good, I agree. That's pretty spicy. And having no target is also awesome. You literally just hit bloodletting and hit this, hit bloodletting and hit this. That's awesome. If there was a situation where it was awesome, which I don't think there is. Actually, according to the wiki, Prime Sure-Footed doesn't work on the stagger from Quick Thinking. It definitely did back when I last used it. Maybe it changed. Yeah, that's the other thing about Quick Thinking. Quick Thinking has had a long and dirty history of it just like never being really clear what was going on. And so even for a long time, I'd heard people say that Prime Sure-Footed worked with Quick Thinking. Personally, I never got that to work, but who knows? Maybe I just tested it wrong. Quick Thinking doesn't even say it staggers you when you take a lot of damage. Who knows? Maybe we all just collectively hallucinated that. We didn't, but can you prove it? No. No, you can't. So anyway, Shalstev and Riley Bow, welcome back, by the way. You both chimed in. Yeah, I don't know. Nova's Null Star prevents Quick Thinking stagger because but that worked the last time I tried it anyway. Yep. Anyhow, it's just the kind of Dread Mirror thing. Let me read what you suggested. Something through some. Yeah, Densora, the worst idea. Garuda's unusually good at using Fire Blast to strip armor. Yeah, you can't raise its strip percentage, so you have to cast it twice. But Garuda can just guzzle Kool-Aid and spam it. It doesn't strip bosses or acolytes, but it strips huge enemy mobs. You know, I thought that was an unexciting idea, but what interests me is the augment for that ability. That seems kind of cool. Let's do that. Fire Blast. Maybe you might be onto something. The whole like the ability gives you the health back thing might be getting a little bit cute, but whatever. Like that's the territory we're in. Let's do a timestamp and let the stream devolve into chaos. I'm gonna put it over, I guess, Blood Altar, and you'll see why when you see what I'm gonna put on it. If it strips armor, doesn't it make this kind of pointless? I don't know. Yeah, that's a whole thing. If all we're doing is spamming an ability that removes all the armor from enemies, do I really care about making enemies take the damage they take as slash? And remember, like, this is obviously really good, but we just spent an hour and a half making builds with this that are really good. So if you wanted to do that, you could just play those builds. I guess I'd put it over Seeking Talons. Even though that seems weird, it just makes no sense to do this unless you're going to do that. So let's do it. And even though that's like, what have you really accomplished? It's a fun idea. The purpose of this is not to be the best build ever, because I don't think that there's really a good reason to look for something else when we already have the Nourish monstrosity. So it's okay to just poke around a little bit. The thing that got me interested is Healing Flame. When Fire Blast hits an enemy, you heal. And I'm hoping that this will still work, even though we don't have an immolation level. Maybe we'll get in between the two values. Yeah, it says Healing Flame Health 37.5, which is in between the two values. So, nice. And then the idea is that you can just go Bloodletting Fire Blast, Bloodletting Fire Blast. You know, you could spam whatever ability you wanted if you just get health into the system. It's not like the ability itself has to heal. That's just kind of nice. That's just sort of elegant. And indeed, for normal Garuda stuff, because of Seeking Talons, it's kind of pointless anyway. Like Garuda already has the ability that you want to spam. The mother of all abilities to spam. It's already there. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is kind of a neat idea. And you could pair it with some kind of dread mirror thing. You have the safety net of having plenty of healing on demand. The blood orb from dread mirror, you know, if the enemies have no armor, will kill things. Purifying Flames for status immunity. That is not valuable enough to excite me. Healing on demand is just molt reconstruct on every build for me. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you just use your operator to get healing right away. The elegance here is that you don't. It's like less clicking around to spam something, because if you spam it that way, you need to hit bloodlet. It's not really spamming. You need to hit bloodletting, go into operator, do the stealth thing, or repeatedly do transference to heal, whichever arcane you like, and then do bloodletting again, and then do the ability again, and then go back into operator, and then do bloodletting again. You know, this makes it less clicking, which will mean more spamming. But yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. But the idea is that you could weave in like some kind of Dread Ward build. I was keen on doing something like that. Well, we don't really need to build it necessarily. It's just a thought. You could add a feature like that. But why not just have Seeking Talons on the build? Like, I don't really have a good answer for that. So I guess it'd be more interesting to pursue what wouldn't be fun with Dread Ward, I guess. The problem is that Pixel's suggested idea, Pixel, welcome back, by the way. We have been playing with the Nourish thing. It's super good. The situation is that you can kind of get to the point where you're just sort of immortal all the time. Pixel is going to add some stuff to this build, and we'll talk about that. But just to clarify, you know, a lot of comments. Riley, you said, I think Nourish and Gloom are the two best subsumes for Garuda. But, and I say this meaning no particular offense, people knew that, and the point of the stream was also to give people ideas for builds, which I just feel like for Garuda it's a little bit of a struggle, because that's so good, and this is so good in a way that is so general. That's kind of a specter looming over Warframe at the moment. There's a lot of builds that are good in a way that makes it seem kind of silly to do anything else, because the thing they do just does everything. This loadout in particular, like, what does this not have that you'd want? You know what I mean? Like, it boosts your energy income, it buffs the whole team's energy income and damage, and you get viral. You know, you have a healing source from an ability, which is totally unnecessary. You have basically infinite energy. You know, you can make enemies have a ridiculously powerful debuff that makes everything slash, and that effect itself has kind of enough damage to just kill things. What is the point of doing something else? A lot of people might feel. But I want to leave room for the people that say, yeah, but I just want to use Dread Ward. Like, yeah, that's fine. What would you use with that? And I insist that it's important to draw a line where it's probably pointless to make like literally just this build, but you subsume Nourish here instead of over Dread Ward. You know what I mean? You know, people can figure that out for themselves. Like, is there anything else interesting that feels like it would be fun in that space? That's all. Yeah, Breach Surge we tackled earlier on. I like this variant. It leaves the enemies stunned while they die, but requires two casts every time you want a group of enemies to die. Whereas this version, they're not. They can still attack you while they're dying, but you only need to click Seeking Talons to do the thing. Um, that. But let's read the rest of the stuff Pixel recommended. I just wanted to. I feel like there really isn't anything, but certainly if somebody has something, please bring it up. I would say yeah, like duration. I'm really keen on rolling guard for a build like this, just so you have another layer of defense if you fail your dread ward thing, or I don't know, like run out of energy or something. Pretty unlikely, but it could happen. You could run out of health. uh, and then duration, I suppose. My notorious reputation for always bringing the hotfixes has arrived. But yeah, certainly with the with any playstyle where you become invulnerable for a time, but it can break, like you can become unable to be invulnerable. I really like rolling guard. I think in general this is just overkill for a lot of frames. It's just not really that hard to make a lot of frames survive without this. And Garuda is one of them, in my opinion. I think it's easy enough to just do this or yeah, a variety of other things to make Garuda stay alive. But if you want to go this way, I would consider using rolling guard and duration. Because the base duration of invulnerability is 8 seconds. That's not bad if you build a bunch of duration. You will kind of lose range if you do narrow-minded, but anyway, um, like on this build, you get a brief window of invulnerability, I think, from Seeking Talons, and you just don't need it. Like it's so easy to become tanky enough that you won't need that. That I definitely wouldn't invest another mod slot in it personally. But you could just turn right around and say, well, you have adaptation. And I would argue, but I don't have to roll to get this defensive benefit. It's a playstyle preference, but I don't think you need it. I think here it's a different situation. You can forego all other survivability, and then you have this safety net just in case you fail at this. Pixel, you said the thing I've been doing with the Nourish version. We'll move back to that. But if people do have some other thing they want to talk about, we can do that. Otherwise, we'll probably just play a little more of this for the end of the stream after we patch, apparently. The heal based on spent energy arcane. Heal. Gain intention? No. Pixel, what's that? Is there a heal on spent energy? Arcane? Well, I believe you that there is one. I guess I don't know. Anyway, Arcane Avenger and Combat Discipline aura for double up on damage multiplying the slash swath. Molt Reconstruct. Heal yourself and allies within affinity range. 6 health at max rank for each energy point spent on the initial casting cost of abilities. Ah, that seems good. Wow. That's so good. Well, all our things about abilities healing you seem very silly in the face of this, which I had forgot existed, because they're adding so many arcanes nowadays, which is exciting. That's really good. That's cool. You have it at rank 5. Do I? And I'm just not seeing it? It's hard with chat overlaid over the screen. Thank you. Sweet. Hell yeah, that's awesome. That's totally unnecessary. Okay. And then you also suggested doing Arcane Avenger and Combat Discipline. Let's talk about that. Combat Discipline. So this is a peculiar aura that says lose, remember the word lose 10 health on kill allies gain 20 health on kill. The idea is that you can use, well, the idea here is that you can use it with Arcane Avenger, which says on damaged, remember that word, on damaged, 21% chance for 45% crit chance for 12 seconds. This is a set bonus to crit chance. So whatever the weapon's crit chance is, doesn't matter. You get 45% slapped on there. Not affected by mods. Whatever the weapon's final crit chance is, whatever's going on, you add 45%. This can make weapons that don't crit easily crit. That could be useful sometimes. But that's also just a big damage increase. Even a weapon with good crit chance, that's a lot of crit chance. On damaged. Well, it works if you use combat discipline. Even though this says lose 10 health on kill, and Arcane Avenger said on damaged, this counts as taking damage, which may or may not be intuitive to you. Personally, I think that is rather unclear. But you could argue that's a corner case situation, and Warframe is full of those. I guess I just feel like if lose health doesn't mean anything in Warframe, so I would rather just said take 10 damage on kill. Killing an enemy does 10 damage to you, something like that. But that's hard. This is a pretty specific example. Sure, there's really no reason you need to not do this. I don't know, besides it just being a good damage increasing combo, it doesn't feel like it specifically does a whole lot here. And I actually think that growing power is quite important here to save space the way I've done it. Certainly if you go the blind rage route that we talked about before, you can save a good amount of space, and then you yeah, you could easily fit that if you wanted. But yeah, that's an option. It's not like Arcane Avenger weirdly makes Seeking Talons crit or something, right? There's nothing like that is gonna happen, right? He said nervously. Please say that it doesn't work like that. Please, even if it's not true, just lie to me, Do me this favor. I'm patching. So we have a moment to, I guess we should do a timestamp for the patching. Why not? Tuna, welcome back. What's going on? You said, how's Warframe going? I've only been distantly paying attention to Warframe. I think that the Duviri paradox is a super weird update. Putting the random selected Warframes and weapons and upgrades alongside what Warframe already was is odd, I think. That's just unusual. Doing that is just, I think, fairly objectively unusual. That is, statistically not commonly done. There are few games that do a similar thing. So that's something. But I also think it's just a weird, kind of good, kind of bad choice for Warframe. I think a fairly obvious good thing is that you get to see a lot of the game's variety. It's a really good way to weave in all the stuff in Warframe for players that are feeling overwhelmed about, all the new stuff. It could, in theory, be a good way to sort of catch up on Warframe, or to feel like you don't need to. They just added in more stuff that you could see. No big deal. Maybe, in theory. I don't know in practice, though. I don't know. So, yeah, I don't know. It's been bumpy. The launch has been bumpy. And it's a really weird piece of design. You said when the next weird update arrives, Duviri won't look so weird, and that's really not true in my opinion. This is weird in a way that goes way beyond the specific mechanics. This way of structuring a game is deeply, deeply unusual. Maybe not good, but weird, and there are some benefits. Very strange. I totally disagree. It will not seem unweird the next time there's a weird update. This is like one of the weirder things I've seen someone do with a game's design, period. Uh, it's just odd. There's a lot of like the circuit allowing you a different way to earn frames is huge for people that want to earn a frame a week, like something like that. But does do a lot of weird things to the way you could get a frame previously. I do think it's quite awkward with the rest of the game. The pressure this puts on the player to pretty much only do this because it's so much more efficient than other ways you can get things. And for frames, like it's guaranteed. Like you will get the frame parts, it's not random. I think that will reveal itself to have some problems down the line. It seems good. It's good in many ways. I like this in a vacuum, but I'm concerned that it's awkward to have this be like this one game mode out of like the 100 ways that you can play Warframe is so much more advantageous, so much more efficient than like most of the other like ways you can play Warframe. I don't know. That doesn't feel very balanced. Yeah, and I'm working on a whole video about this, so I guess what I'll leave it at for now is I have some questions about whether the type of person who would enjoy the rest of Warframe. I'm not sure that person wants the paradox thing. I mean, that's not one type of person, but I think there's a significant amount of things in Warframe that if you like them about normal Warframe, well, Paradox can't or doesn't do them. And therefore, if you like Warframe, in some ways, you're almost guaranteed to dislike some things about Paradox, which is one, when you put it that way, obvious reason why other games haven't done this. I think the upshot is that there are some positive benefits too, so we have to weigh, like what happens if you do choose to do game design this way. Obviously, there's a lot of problems that are temporary. There's been a lot of bugs. A lot of them have been fixed, but a lot of them have not. I completed a run of the Steel Path Duviri experience, and I was literally just standing still after completing it. Like you get teleported out of the worm fight arena, and you're like standing in Duviri, and you can walk through the portal to leave. I was just standing still for like 15 seconds, and the game just said mission failed. I didn't do anything. I was not touching my computer setup. The game just said, nah. Nothing really happened as far as I can tell. The game was like, nah, your rewards, screw your rewards. Which, like, it's fine. For me, that could be annoying if that was someone's only time for a run during the weekend. But anyway, there's been lots of bugs. And like Mr. Fu, you said there's tile fatigue in the circuit, and the game modes need to be more diverse, and the scaling is weird. But all of that stuff, as much as it's totally sensible critiques, doesn't attack the issue of putting this type of gameplay loop in Warframe. All those things can be relatively easily fixed. You can fix the bugs, you can add more variety. Warframe itself has more variety. The circuit can just have all the game modes in it, and that would help. More tiles, and that would help, etc. I'm not saying that totally removes the problem, but you get what I mean. The underlying thing, I think, is ultimately you can't escape the question, does it feel coherent to put this gameplay loop into this game that has this other gameplay loop? And the answer is I don't know. I I feel about like that about it. Mm, about that good. Um so Tuna, that's what I think about the update. Um yeah, so I mean anyhow, yeah. Um Yeah, Tuna, I mean, I can assure you that's not true, but that's just not true. Like that is a unkind comment to developers that worked hard on this thing. So I'm not going to read it and get it in the YouTube video. But I do want to say that it's worth considering how I'm sure that the Digital Extremes thought about whether putting this gameplay loop into Warframe is a good idea for the game, and I'm sure they would agree that it's obviously good and that it rotates through a bunch of weapons, and obviously bad in that the circuit is way too thin to support the value it provides. But it's not a turn and burn type of change. I mean, putting something like this in the game fundamentally alters what experience the game is offering. It's not like just adding an expansion. You're saying you can play through the game and not play the game that was here before if you want. That's a lot more than just adding an expansion to a game from a design perspective, but also from a marketing perspective. What you need to do to get the things in the game that they monetize, like frames and stuff, is completely different than it was before this update released. At the moment, it's really buggy and kind of thin, and people don't know how it works, so the effects of that are unclear. But that stuff will change in a year, and then people will know, and then we will find out whether we like it or not, whether it's like actually a good idea to structure a game this way. Um, um, so yeah, I do not think it is a shock and awe game design decision. Um, I agree that the art in Warframe is frequently an unambiguous high point. I think it's beautiful and exciting to look at, but I wouldn't want that to overshadow the idea that the update didn't have a lot of thought put behind it. I just don't. I'm sure I share the developers' feeling that it's very unclear exactly what it will do to the game to have added that. That is not entirely clear, and it won't be clear until people have kind of gotten to grips with what it even is, and until they've fleshed it out more, and until all the bugs are fixed, and until it's been a few months after that. And then we can see what actually happens to a game if you do that in it. And so, really, the thing I'm the most excited about, as it almost always is with these updates, is just to see what happens. I'm kind of along for the ride. Um, I feel bad saying this because it's a thing you can only say from the comfort of not having your game be your livelihood. But Mr. Fruit, you said I would rather DE try new, weird, unusual things and fail horribly than do the same things over and over with moderate success. And that is something that I check my privilege on being able to say, but I completely agree. I don't know if it's going to be good for the game overall to have done this, but hell yeah to doing this because we're going to learn. It might not be good. It might not be fun, but we're going to learn. So I don't know. If you're a game designer, you love this update. That's my shtick. Like, how can you not love that they did that? That it's crazy. What are you doing? Like, that's wild. I'm a little worried about Warframe, but from a game design perspective, hell yeah, this update. Like, yeah, what are you doing? It's nuts. You did? I have a friend that I've that's been wanting to play Warframe for a long time, but just has bounced off it because it's too hard to keep up with for them, and there's too much new stuff. And I explained this update to them, and they said, no, though. And I was like, no, yeah, they did that. And he's like, they did not do that. No one would do that. And I said, right, no, they totally put it in. And he said that's like not even like that's almost more than making a new game. And I said, right, yeah. They also are making a new game that's called Soulframe. And he said, wait a minute, why aren't they? Why isn't it just that? Um, so yeah, I don't know. I can definitely relate to the feeling of like, wow, I didn't know Warframe was going to get to this point. Um, but really, for me, it's only from a game design perspective. I actually think visually, this is quite an academic update if you're familiar with Warframe. Like, it's really beautiful and everything, but not in a way that I'm unfamiliar with personally. Some of the aesthetics have like visual design of riding on horseback has in Duviri has this mix of like you're a Valkyrie but also a Wild West gunslinger. That's really weird. Like that to me has is a very unfamiliar and wonderful aesthetic. But from an overall visual design perspective, I don't think it's a particularly unfamiliar or like unwarframe looking update. But it's really pretty, I think. I don't know if that matters, but anyway, let's end the aside. But I did say that in the intro, I did say we were gonna let the stream stray from being like literally we only talk about Garuda for 2 hours, and anyone who says anything that isn't the word Garuda in the message, I ignore. Like we're not doing that. Nobody wants that. If you want that, you're still getting that for like an hour and a half. So this version is better. Don't add me. And it means that when people watch the build labs, look, this series does reasonably well when I put these archives up, and that's now. Like when my channel's, you know, search engine status is completely bumbled yucked. So in the future, they might do moderately well. If you like these, you 100% would enjoy the other streams because they're pretty much the same thing. We started doing this basically because we already were doing it. You definitely would enjoy the other Zandy streams if you like these. Like if you're listening to this right now on YouTube, you should watch some of the other streams. I'm not saying that because I'm trying to plug myself too much. If you're not going to like the stream, I don't want you to go watch it. But you would. If you're enjoying this, you would enjoy it because it literally is the same as the stream. So we'll go back to talking about a few Garuda things now. Rusty, you don't have to rush. Don't worry. We'll stick around for a few more. You said before stream wraps up, can I ask what you think about expedite suffering on Garuda? That's an interesting idea. I guess the idea here is that you can take the slash from Seeking Talons and make the damage happen immediately. I think my concern about this is that as we've demonstrated during the stream, if the benefit of this is just damage, you nourish and breach surge and stuff give you such a big damage boost to breach surge that because you have to pick like nourish or breach surge or this, I'm not going to pick this over those if the purpose is only to increase Seeking Talons damage. Do you see what I mean? But if you're a person who likes Seeking Talons and then you attack enemies, then I guess this is good. My feeling about expedite suffering has always been there are very few enemies in Warframe where you powerfully apply a damage over time effect that has a meaningful amount of damage, but the enemy doesn't die from it unless you do this, like in a timely manner. I haven't found a situation like that. The biggest thing about expedite suffering for me is that it can increase the damage. That's not a huge thing on its own, but you can use status duration as a damage multiplier. Sometimes you can get a ton of status duration, but you can't really get the damage out of that. Enemies are going to take like 30 seconds to die. The weapon that comes to mind is, what's that thing called? Yeah, it is the Acrid. Yeah, like you can't sit around for 24 seconds in Warframe waiting for an enemy to die, but with Expedite Suffering you don't have to. You could just load them up, and if you use Expedite Suffering, that status duration was converted into literally tripling your status damage, which is a lot. Is that enough that the Acrid does good damage? You decide. I don't know. But that's what comes to mind when I think of expedite suffering. I think the problem with expedite suffering is that if an enemy takes significant slash damage, for example, they'll die quick enough that you didn't really gain anything by getting the damage out faster. I think for expedite suffering to be valuable, you need to have done a damage over time effect that represents a lot of damage, but not within like 10 seconds or so. Like it needs to be a lot of damage total, but pretty much mostly through status duration. If you're interested in expedite suffering, also see Lavos, because Lavos has that thing where when you build duration, you get status duration from it. So if you're interested in that subject, I think Lavos is a good frame for that. Or Citron, Pistol Whip, correct. Citron has Prismatic Gem, status, chance, and duration in the proximity of the turret. Interesting. Or maybe in the circuit with lots of decrees throwing status around, but a lot of them might not do that much. I don't know. It's an interesting idea on Garuda, but my point is that I don't think expedite suffering is that good unless you have status duration. Otherwise, statuses in Warframe do their damage quick enough that making them do it all immediately just doesn't do anything a lot of the time. And it doesn't help that the competition for an ability to increase Seeking Talons damage is extremely steep. But not every type of player would care about that. Just catching up on chat a little bit more. Free William, welcome back. Pull on Garuda's a riot. Interesting. Yeah, grouping enemies is definitely something I'm into. On Garuda, I'm a big fan of. We were talking about the Sobek earlier, and acid shells grouping with Garuda's Seeking Talons. And the way I've chosen to add that in is with the Nautilus, just because I think Helminth abilities are so combo-tastic on Garuda. I wanted my pulling from something else. But I can absolutely see, you want to bring like Larva or Pull or something. I think Nautilus Sentinel is a great addition as well. Big fan. Expedite suffering on Prismatic Gem is a cool idea. When we eventually, long time, get to Citron, that might be a while. I'll think about that. I kind of like that idea. On Lavos too, there's a lot of combo potential with Helminth abilities, and so on Citron, maybe I feel like there's a little less competition. Expedite suffering is interesting there, yeah. The theory on Expedite Suffering is that you get a big damage tick from your Seeking Talons that creates a big slash proc that in turn creates a massive damage tick, exponential scaling. It exists, but it requires a lot of effort, and Breach Surge is a very similar thing. Yeah, I think that's my problem, right, is ultimately you've just made a more complicated way that Seeking Talons does more damage with the Helminth ability, and in particular you need to cast it more times. We have Nourish, where you don't need to cast it any times to make Seeking Talons kill everything. You have Breach Surge, where you need to cast Breach Surge once to make Seeking Talons kill everything. And then you have Expedite Suffering, where you need to cast Expedite Suffering several times to make Breach Surge kill everything. I probably said Breach Surge and Seeking Talons interchangeably there a lot of times, but you get the point. That's not bad, but part of me is like, why? That's all. I don't love blending talents here, actually. I was kind of fine with just doing the Seeking Talents thing. Breach Talons and Seeking Surge. Breaching Surgeons. Hell yeah. That's my college band name. Badass. I'm keeping this slot open. Anyway. Yish. Alright, continuing to catch up on chat a little bit. J7D, welcome aboard. Welcome back. How you doing? We're toward the end of a stream talking about Garuda stuff, and we kind of settled on this lovely Nourish interaction. Nourish is a great Helminth ability in general, of course, but because it gives viral damage not just to your weapons but to your abilities, and it does the status effect, Seeking Talons will then inflict slash and a viral status effect alongside itself, and it gets the damage from Nourish and also from Garuda's passive. This ability, when buffed by Nourish, will often just outright kill enemies by itself, even up through steel path levels, through walls, which is pretty good when you can get as much energy for it as you could possibly want. And the only drawback to that was that you lose health, and you can get as much health as you want. So that's not bad. But I became concerned that we were in a situation where that's so good that it makes other builds that people might find fun just feel kind of like, why? And I don't want someone who's excited about Dread Ward to get nothing out of discussing Garuda. I'm just not sure what we should give them. So we did talk about that briefly. We talked about other alternatives to make Seeking Talons kill everything. There's many Helminth abilities that are a nice combo there. And I thought I missed one of them. I feel like I lost something specific in there. There was something else I was gonna do here. Chad, I lost something. Where were we? Anyway, that was more or less what we covered during the stream. We talked a little bit about the situation with the Duviri paradox. I just think it's a wild update. And I'm excited to put out the video I made about it. I think I'm probably the most should I say proud? That's not exactly right. I'm just the most confident in the video that I'm almost done with on the Duviri paradox, like weird game design situation. I don't even really know what to call it. Than I have been with something for a long time. There was something. Hold on. Let me scroll back up a bit. Yes, I think we talked about this. Ace, you said, I have little ad for Nourish Garuda, though I did want to draw attention to a voracious metastasis. I think we talked about that, but let me make sure. Because that was pretty cool, the thing where you could restore energy to the whole squad. If you have a reason you want to do that, basically a co-op buddy that you like, yeah, this is gas. If you have an actual reason to do it, you can hit Bloodletting, which makes you lose health and gain energy, and then hit this, which makes you lose energy, gain way more health than you lost at the beginning of the process, and grant the squad a lot of energy. If you have a reason to do this, it's very good at doing it. I'm just not convinced that there is any good, like, why would you need that? But if you do, it's not a problem with the effectiveness. Like, that's surely very good. Ace, what's the energy on this? Well, I mean, the duration, excuse me. What, it says duration. What the heck is the duration of it? Says consume energy to heal yourself and grant matching energy to each ally. Does it regenerate the energy over 10 seconds? And then you can do transient fortitude to make it shorter? Is that what you meant? Why is there a duration to this ability? The heal is over time. That's unclear. Okay, so for negative duration, if that, or positive duration, whichever one makes it shorter, negative duration would be good. Some abilities like this are aware that the negative duration is good, and so it gives you, anyway, whatever. You get the point. That seems good. I'm sure there's someone out there for whom like it's co-op land, and they would be really hyped about that. Another detail is that I believe you can only cast Bloodletting if you have a tiny bit more health than the minimum, which is 2. So maybe some people like the heal over time because you can cast Bloodletting more times, though not necessarily for like a ton of energy. Ace, you said, I personally like Voracious Metastasis because it's a heal over time. Unlike Molt Reconstruct or healing directly from abilities, the Warframe will continue to gain health for a while. On Necros, this is useful to me for making Shield of Shadows, slightly safer to cast. I'm less likely to have an accident during its cast time. I see. That makes sense, yeah. I also think comparing it to something like Molt Reconstruct, you get more. It kind of does more for the slot. If you want the health regen, people have recommended Archon shards in this stream as well. Pixel, you said why do you helmet over the 1 instead of over the 2? Let's talk about that. Sure. Preference, but I actually think Blood Altar is really convenient. Garuda's first ability, Pixel says, provides directional invulnerability, scaling damage, and mobility, and her 2 is Magus Repair if you ordered it off Wish. Savage Burn. Exaggerating a little for comedy, the 2 definitely has its moments, but the choice seems unambiguous to me. Sure, I completely understand. Let me explain my perspective. Holy shit, you burn this ability so bad. Anyway, completely valid. Like, that's true. It is. Dread Mirror, let's go look at Dread Mirror, provides directional invulnerability, mobility. So, directional invulnerability, I feel I can easily become tanky enough without it, and then I don't have to maintain it. In the first place, I think that Nourish with Seeking Talons, a big advantage is that you click less buttons to kill everything with Seeking Talons. And if my goal is to click less buttons, on this build it is, I don't want to use Dread Mirror to stay alive. I just want to stay alive. That's possible, and the opportunity cost is apples to oranges. So that's that point. But it's clearly preference. Like, it makes total sense to do that, sure. The mobility. Well, Blood Altar does the same thing there. One thing these abilities have in common is they Dread Mirror, if it was here, and Blood Altar both have a long targeted lunge at an enemy based on your range, and the base range is really good. So they both have that. So that's even. That's not a reason to pick one or the other. Besides Dread Mirror's Blood Orb thing, 3. Well, I like that part of the ability. I like that you can kind of float for a sec and hurl the Blood Orb. However, you can do that with Seeking Talons. In fact, in this build, I'm doing that constantly with Seeking Talons. So I actually love that about Dread Ward. I love throwing the Blood Orb for the big damage with this ability. But it is pretty much the same thing I'm doing with Seeking Talons. And finally, you mentioned the Execute, right? The scaling damage, the Execute, which again, I like what this has done is created an omnidirectional, like mathematically inescapable oubliette of death. I just don't like it. Has many benefits. Dread Mirror has many benefits, and this build has invalidated all of them. Or to put it a different way, I just think that this ability is quite redundant with Garuda's kit. This is actually kind of common in Warframe, and I don't know why. If you look at a lot of Frames kits, there's a number of frames where they have an ability that is like noticeably redundant with other parts of their kit, as if the developers, were thinking about the helmet system and wanted you to be able to replace something, or, they want room to accomplish things the frame is good at the way you prefer, maybe something like that, right? If you just like Dread Mirror, then you can do a lot of the things that I accomplished with my build with this too. And why is it worse to do them with Dread Mirror? It's not, I guess. I don't know. It isn't. It's not really better, I don't think, in any way. I don't really care about this, but I would, if you held me at gunpoint, I would make some kind of argument about how this like takes less clicks or time or something, but it doesn't really matter. I don't know. I think that's all it is. They probably design things that way just to give people options, which I think is good. It's kind of a shame that a lot of communities, not talking about ours, don't play that up. They're like, this is just inferior and therefore we shouldn't talk about it. And it's like, well, okay, I mean, everything's pointless. You want to go talk about it? Like, so I always like having a community of people that kind of don't say that. Asymptomatic, you also pointed out, this is obvious now that you mentioned it, but you're absolutely right. The leveling system. Dread Ward is like Garuda's full kit but when the frame is unranked, a Warframe asymptomatic says, sort of has to be able to cast something for the first few levels. This frequently results in two abilities that are lower in cost with power to match. That's true, or at least one. And again, you can look at a lot of frames where it seems like part of the frame's playbook is this ability, but they're gonna get it from one of their later abilities, and so to have them have it early, it's gotta be like this. That's weird. I wonder, Digital Extremes something marketing data suggesting people dropped frames before getting all their abilities? Maybe. And then maybe the Duviri paradox would make them stop needing to worry about that. Not sure there's something there, but there you go. Can you build Incarnon headshots off them too? Wait, which? What? Oh, the Blood Altar to build melee combo. I doubt you can... Ooh, can you, Can you build Incarnon headshots off a Dreadmere, a Blood Altar enemy? Anyway, obvious clone said sometimes I use Blood Altered victims to build melee combo since they're invulnerable and count as getting a hit, which maybe means you can build Incarnon headshots off of them. Someone should check that out. Like right now. What are you doing there? It's crazy. Probably have time for this, and then I will need to bid you all farewell. I'll wind down a little bit more. Pretty sure I'm just not hitting this enemy's head, though. Let's try again. Nope. Doesn't look like it to me anyway. A valiant effort, to be sure. I wanted that to work. I don't know, right? It's big cheese, but I like cheese. Stonks. A stonk. So what do you think, chat? Actually, I have a little reflecting thing to ask you before we wind down. Did you like the way I did this stream better than how I've done it in the past? Did you prefer that? We did things a little differently. We played things a bit differently. We allowed the stream to be a bit less focused on literally only the frame, while I still think doing a pretty good job of focusing on the frame. What do you think? I think good, but I'm not the one who has to, well, or rather, I am more likely to like it to begin with. I have to like it, but you're less likely to like it. So did you like it? I definitely think there's still like technique to including discussion of other things when we have one really good idea. And Pixel, I do think it was a really good idea when you told me about, do these have homing? What the heck? Ooh, those home. That's neat. The Incarnon kunai is like homing knives. That's so badass. Ooh, that's so cool. Ooh, ooh, the damage is so, but it's so, ooh, that's nice. You gotta love that. That's pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'd be some work because they'd have to get a lot of demo videos for a lot of these things, but it really would be nice if the Incarnon Genesis adapters had a demo of what the Incarnon Genesis form does. The Incarnon Genesis adapters actually don't even say anything about what the Incarnon form of the weapon does at the moment, which is bad. I really wish they did. They're really cool, so I feel bad saying too much negative about them. But to me, that was a huge fail for Incarnon Genesis. I basically just guessed which one I would like, when their effects have very little to do with how I would like them normally. For example, a lot of people don't like kunai because it isn't that accurate, or they don't like how it hits enemies. It has travel time, you know, it has the slight variance where you like throw it, and each thing comes from like a slightly different angle, like that whole thing. A defining feature of kunai is that it isn't the easiest weapon in the world to hit enemies with. So people who would like an aimbot version of the weapon probably avoided kunai, but that's exactly what the Incarnon form is. Like that, no, bad. So that's a shame. Digital Extremes, I love these. I love the Incarnon Genesis adapters. This is like my favorite new build thing that's been added to Warframe ever, maybe. There's a lot of interesting different choices, and it's really cool. But the problem is that it's impossible to decide which one you would like. It's impossible to know. Many of them actually actively defy you guessing correctly which one you'd like. Again, I feel like many people who would have liked the kunai one literally specifically avoided it. Like they avoided it on purpose, thinking they wouldn't like it when in fact it was the exact opposite. So, obvious clone, I like surprises too. I just feel like this was a kind of nega surprise. It was a surprise that, that, I'm surprised that I guessed incorrectly about which weapons I would like. Anyway. But I get what you mean. Like, it's fine for them to be surprises in theory, but I just don't like that you have to pick before you even play at all, and then you don't have any idea what they're going to be like. I don't know. I don't think that's a good. And you have to wait like months for it to come back around if you don't pick it and you want it. Yeah, like, I don't think that's good. This is not the place for a surprise. It's like what they say in gaming, right? If you even if you want your game to surprise the player, you cannot make the marketing on the package of the game like not be what the game is like. Like that will not work. You could do that for Maho Shoujo Madoka Magica because it's a TV show and the mood, the tone, the atmosphere of the TV show is the same throughout. It just doesn't show you the actual plot point, like, you know, turn or reveal until a few episodes in. So that's okay. That one works. And to be fair, actually a lot of people criticize that one too. That's reaching for an example. The Two-Face marketing for Madoka was hilarious. They also went like they put a lot of effort into that. That was hard. So if you think that was good, like they really worked for it, and I think it was a product of the it being a piece of media you just watch, so they can make the mood, you know, whatever. But if you have a horror game and you don't advertise it as a horror game, that would make you an asshole. Like that's not very nice. So that's an example. Anyway, I just think this isn't the place for a surprise, but I totally get what you mean. It's fine to have surprises in your game. I just think when it's a choice like that that you really need to commit to and you're kind of locking the player in, you shouldn't have it be ambiguous what they're going to get. If you don't have to have it be ambiguous, which they totally don't. Okay, anyway, I think that's it. I think that's all we have to do. Um, a summary then. Uh, Garuda. We had sure did get big bongo damage from Nourish. A lot of discussion focused around what helmet ability you want to combo with Seeking Talons to kill everything, because boy howdy are there a lot of options, and you can pick them. You can you can choose between them. Does it matter? Which one you choose? No one has the answers to these questions. But in other news, yeah, I also think it's worth noting Dread Mirror. This is a perfectly fine thing to play with. I like this ability. I didn't really have any further insights about what to do here. The duration, more duration, probably not narrow-minded. But yeah, you could flesh out a whole build here that would I'm probably going to start by putting on the rest of the duration that isn't narrow-minded, which gives me almost 17 seconds of invulnerability when I get an execute. And then you can increase the threshold um, with duration, right? No? Or, sorry, with strength. So if you put Intensify on, for example, the execute threshold doesn't go up. Okay, I misremembered that. I'm glad we checked. I really like the blood orbs too. I just feel like murdering everything by hovering in the air and throwing a blood orb is quite similar to floating in the air and murdering everything with Seeking Talons. So I don't really have the appetite to build both. I wonder how many people share that feeling. I thought the point Asymptomatic made about that redundancy is maybe because of the leveling process. That I never really thought about it that way. When you say it like that, it's obvious, but I never really thought about it that way before. Huh. There's a lot of frames that have some kind of thing early, but then it's kind of bad, and then later on you get a good version of it, or one or the other. Um, hmm. Pistol, you said if you're focusing on Dread Mirror, that one duration with shields active could be good, because the barrier from Dreadward will prevent you from losing shields. That's a thought. The arcane is called something inane like mold efficiency, despite giving you duration and not efficiency. Thank you, Warframe. But anyway, this is good. That's a good call. Yeah, pistol whip, a way to get the duration with. I just want the range because you can lunge to enemies from further away that way, but also the blood orb, damage area benefits quite a bit. Maybe a bit of range. Whew. Ah. So yeah, I don't know. For me, this has been a standby, and I'm quite attached to the Sobek with acid shells and the Nautilus. It seems like a fun idea, has been fun for this stream, with Cordon to make little groups that you can acid shells. That's very nice. Nourish, Yawn, but it's like really particularly good on this loadout, so if we're going to talk about it anywhere, I want to talk about it here. Cool. And Milkcap, you said I only watched Madoka Magica because I knew about the gimmick, and I disliked Ava because it tricked me into a genre I didn't want to watch. That show is guilty of doing that, isn't it? Possibly unintentionally, to some extent, but anyway. Yeah, Free William, I'm a big fan of it here. There's just so many things about this weapon that can be frustrating that this loadout fixes. It's amazing. Acid shells, but then it won't get through armor, but then it will get through armor because Seeking Talons will make it do slash damage. And you get the damage increase from Viral, from Nourish, and the weapon like kind of has potato crit chance, so I really want a bunch of damage on it, and Garuda's got that one damage passive. And the reload is really obnoxious and long, but you can just use Bloodforge to reload it. It's beautiful. Like, this weapon is a match made in heaven for this loadout. I kind of feel like the Sobek is still bad even here. It's thoroughly mediocre. I just like it. I think it's definitely not useful anywhere else. So that's not entirely fair, but against high level, very durable enemies, I don't think you're gonna get this to kill much of anything beyond this this level, or this loadout. But I do think that's a very good fit. If you do that that Arcane Avenger thing that Pixel Piranha mentioned earlier, this weapon lacks that crit chance, so that's a beautiful fit. But imagine Sobek Incarnate. Anyway, that was the loadout. I thought it was pretty alright. I thought it was pretty cool. We did briefly touch on the topic of discussing frames specifically in the context of Duviri or the cave or paradox modes, whatever you want to call it. And I basically explained that I think most frames, like the thing you would build anyway, is good in that context. That is what you'd want. Upon further examination, I basically think you shouldn't really change anything about the way you mod things for that game mode, which is kind of good because I feel like people don't want to do that. But at the same time, that's kind of uninteresting, maybe. I am going to make a little video about that on the Bootleg Builds channel, which if you're on YouTube, that's where you already are, so that's good. Sometimes I forget, but that time I didn't. Tons of anime references. Shout out to your boy Kongming, that was fun. I had fun with that. The Japanese cover of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, that is the opening to your boy Kongming, is one of the most fire anime openings in a long time. I didn't know I wanted that until I got it. Why is this existing? But it's great. And Ace asked if Made in Heaven was a JoJo reference, which I enjoyed at the end of part 6. It was out of control. I was really sad for a certain character who was only scared that one time in their life, and I shed a single tear. Anyway, I guess Garuda has that big JoJo energy too, you know. All right, we gotta go. Good show. Talk to y'all soon.